Drug addiction can be difficult on many different levels, and joining us to talk more about it is Nicholas Albaugh. He is Director of Program Development for Amatus Recovery Centers. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So despite all the information that's out there, many people still have some misconceptions when it comes to drug addiction, correct?
Yes, very correct.
What are some of the misconceptions that are out there?
Some of the common misconceptions would be, I think one of the biggest ones is that addiction is a choice rather than a disease.
Okay.
Whether research comes out showing that addiction is a brain disease that affects the frontal cortex, the prefrontal cortex, all that stuff. People always look at it as an issue with self-will.
Yes, or self-control, absolutely.
Self-control.
So then how does a team at Amatus Recovery Centers, and it's 11 different locations,
We have 11 different locations in
goodness.
4 different states.
In 4 different states.
Yes.
So how does that team go about working through this misinformation and those misconceptions?
We do that on multiple levels. One of the biggest things that we like to do directly at our facilities is family support. So having family support groups come in where it's not just necessarily, counseling about the loved one, but more education. And this is what addiction looks like. These are some of the behaviors that you may see, some of the patterns that your loved one may be going through that can help you identify areas or times when the individual is going through something.
And I imagine that that helps the individual more too, because then they know that they're being supported by their loved ones. At least their loved ones are trying to understand why this is happening.
Yes, definitely. And that's one of the biggest things we do at the facility level. From a national level, we offer local speaking at high schools, middle schools, to churches, and then we also work with other groups in Ohio specifically. We work with a place called FAD, which is Families Against Addiction and Death. Families Against Addiction and Death, where they have a weekly meeting, and they inform the parents, the loved ones, the children, all that stuff.
It's
about
really
addiction.
helpful because it spans out to the entire community.
Correct.
I'm wondering also, why do you think it's so hard for people to see drug addiction as a disease, sort of like you would with diabetes or cancer or some other disease that people know it, I guess, is more accepted?
Right. Well, with cancer, one of the hardest things is with differentiating cancer and addiction is addiction a lot of the times is looked at as started by the individual.
Got it.
Right. Cancer is not necessarily something that the individual causes.
To you.
Right now, you look at lung cancer. People smoke, and that's one of the leading causes of getting lung cancer. But with diabetes, a lot of people look at type 1 diabetes, where someone's born with it. But then what you really need to look at is the genealogical aspect, right? And the fact that it's, it can be, in a family's, throughout their history that they have addiction, that they have cancer, that there's a history of heart attacks, high blood pressure.
Right.
And that's
and
the
this
same
is like
thing.
Like that.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Okay, so there's a unit that you have at Amatus. Tell me what that entails.
The most unique approach we have is a whole life approach, right? We look at the individual, not the disease, right? So we like to treat them from an emotional standpoint, a physical standpoint, a medical standpoint, and an environment standpoint, where it's not just the family, but it's their entire life environment. If they're in school, if they have a job, and working with their with the entire person rather than just working on the disease itself.
Which makes sense. Yeah, it's all encompassing. If someone is watching right now and they realize that they might have a problem, but they're scared, they don't know if they should reach out, what would you say? What's the best advice to someone that's sort of on the cusp of making that move to get help?
This may be the best decision that you make in your entire life, and change will happen, whether you reach out or not.
And so if they decide to reach out, how can they contact you? You said 11 different locations in 4 different states. Yes. Oh, there we go. We've got a website there. So just go to amatusrecoverycenters.com, or they can call that number on the screen, correct?
Sure can.
Perfect. Nick Albaugh, being here. A lot of helpful information, I think, for people dealing with this and their loved ones so that they can support. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And we'll be right back with more Midday Maryland right after this. Stay tuned.